Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the March 11th, 2025 meeting of the Hatfield Select Board. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'm going to begin by reading our public participation policy. The Hatfield Select Board welcomes everyone to its meetings and all other public meetings of the town of Hatfield. All regular and special meetings of the boards and committees of the town of Hatfield shall be open to the public and shall conform to the open meeting law. Executive sessions are closed to the public and will be held only as prescribed by the statutes of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It is important to recognize that the open meeting law affords the opportunity to listen to the proceedings, but not necessarily participate. During meetings of the Select Board, an attempt will be made to find a balance between hearing from members of the community and conducting the required business of the Hatfield Select Board. So first, we do have some announcements. First, some sad news, and that is I learned today of the passing of Barbara Petson. Barbara was a longtime Hatfield resident and a longtime employee of the schools. I know she worked in the lunch program when I was there. I think she helped in the office, and just a lovely, sweet person to be around. So our condolences to the Petson family. And you wanted to mention?
I wanted to mention, sadly, the passing of Richard Gilbert Sr., who was a former constable at one time for the Hatfield Police Department, along with driving a school bus for the schools.
Well, we're sorry to hear about both of those passings. We do have some good news. Jean Hobby has been recognized as School Nurse of the Year. Jean has been the nurse up at both schools. I think she goes between both schools for many years. So that's very, very nice recognition. And I'm sure the school committee will recognize her as well, but we did want to mention something. And then really, really good news. We were notified by the Healey administration of our Chapter 90 apportionment for fiscal year 2026, which is $401,973 compared to last year's $242,000. So that's a significant rise. We can always use the Chapter 90 funds. And I believe that part of this has to do with the surtax, the new so-called millionaires tax that will be now added into. A portion of it goes to transportation, a portion of it goes to education. And so this will be extra money to communities through the formula for Chapter 90. So that's wonderful. Any other announcements, Ed?
No, I don't have anything else.
Greg?
Nope.
Andrew? Anybody? Okay, public forum. Anybody here for public forum? Come on up.
Hello, my name is Christopher Smith. I live on 17 Prospect Street. I am the subject of a executive session that's coming up at topic 9, and I would like to exercise my right to have it as an open session.
Great.
So I put together a note. I'll give this to Andrew, and I'll see you guys later.
We may get to it sooner than that.
Okay, he sent me a letter that said 7:30,
If
but
you want us to wait till 7:30, we can wait.
you know, is your agenda light or something?
Well, it's so tough to say because we have the schools coming in, and of course at 6:30. But we could have time maybe.
So,
Why
Why don't we just stick to 7:30 so that you don't have
come
to.
back around 7 and,
That sounds
okay?
great.
Yeah.
That
So,
would be good.
yeah.
I'll take that. Thank you very much.
Okay,
We appreciate it.
but now stick around. It should be good to you.
Looking forward to it myself, Chris. Thanks.
Very much.
Okay, so the first item is our consent agenda, which is the approval of the February 25th, 2025 minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve February 25th, 2025 meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor? Aye. Second agenda is the ban signing for the wastewater treatment plant financing. And Tammy, you're here for that. Did you want to speak to it or?
You guys should have already received the email, which had all the information regarding the ban. It's the rest of the borrowing from the 12 million that we had already approved, which will get us through till the fall. And then that will then become our USDA loan.
Great. So we just have to make a motion to sign all these.
Make a motion to approve band documents for wastewater treatment plant financing.
I'll second.
Motion made second. Any further discussion?
No.
Just going to go through these quick. Some that just require Ed as the clerk. Correct? I'll get this done as soon as I can here. I'm just keeping them all together. Sorry to hold this up. Okay, so can we move forward while they're signing? So the second business is an agreement with the First Congregational Church for document storage.
Yes, so you have a draft of a MOU in your packets this evening. So the background on this is we discussed last time that we had some documents that were being stored in Diamondback storage on behalf of the Historical Commission. And these documents are now ready to be moved upstairs for the most part. So most of the work is being done to get all the things that were in this storage into the upstairs archives. And that's going very well. There is one pallet of materials that it's extremely heavy and it's not recommended to be in the upstairs area. And we were trying to find another place to store it. Obviously, keeping it in Diamondback long term isn't a very good idea, just because of the expense there. And the Historical Society and Commission were able to identify some space that would work well in the First Congregational Church. They're comfortable with this space. The church is willing to do it. They're charging what I would say is fairly low fee in order to do so. And overall, as long as the Historical Commission and Society can have access to these documents when they need to, especially the curator that's hired by the Society, we should be in good shape. This document, this MOU, would be signed by the Commission, the Historical Commission, but I wanted the Select Board to see it, in part because they really can only sign it if there is an appropriation to move forward with this. It fits in our current budget. Obviously, we'll be able to trim the budget much more from what we had right now for the Diamondback storage. The fee would be $80 a month, which is nominal, but still we need to be comfortable with that as a board. And I wanted to bring this agreement to you to look over and see if there are any concerns. The Historical Commission is comfortable with it. Historical Society is comfortable with it. And the First Congregational Church will be discussing it tomorrow night. Their trustees will meet to discuss it. So if we get any edits from them, we'll review it, and I'll be sure to let you know about them. But the document would be signed by the Commission. And that's basically all there is to it.
Ed?
Well, it's $80 per month. That's not a large amount, so it's not bad. I'm just sort of disappointed because we were told that upstairs was going to be all the space they needed, and they found out it's not, but I guess it happens. I mean, Congregational Church, what type of large items are we talking about that cannot be? I mean, I just have to understand the large items that cannot be stored, like in the barn, they need with some kind of temperature control or something. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's the big palette of documents. So I'm not sure why the documents can't be stored another way. That would make it less heavy as a palette, but this is at the recommendation of the curator that this is how they're stored. I don't know if they still need to work towards removing these documents or storing them another way, but it's a large pallet, very heavy, and this to them right now would represent the best solution moving forward.
Well, I mean, it does sound like the best solution if that's what they're saying, and it's not, it's $80 a month. Like, I guess it's, where do we get the funding source for this?
So right now, we have a line item for building leases that's in the DPW budget. That's what we've been using. It probably should come directly from the Historical Commission's budget. I think that would make the most sense. And I think there's a line item that could be used for that would fit the $80 per month.
And it would only be through the end of the fiscal year because that would be a new budget.
We're all set for the end of this fiscal year. We'd want to move it into.
Oh, it's into
that-
next fiscal year that.
This would be in, well, the agreement's for 2 years.
I mean, I think it's great that the church is stepping up, although we don't have a final decision from them. You know, we want to keep the documents safe, but we just keep finding solutions and then the problem changes. So you know, we just have to get a handle on this collection. And I mean, I guess it's just another temporary solution, and it's now the collection's not all together, and I don't know. I have no problem with it, I guess, as an isolated agreement. It's just part of that larger discussion that we can't ever seem to find a solution for. Or we find a solution and then it's not
Well,
enough.
we're told there's a solution.
We're
and
told
we-
it's going to be
we go
fine,
with
it's all
it,
we
and
need.
then all of a sudden they say, oh, no.
Oh, is that it? Are we done now after they store that?
This is all I'm told that they need a place for. But
Well, I mean, it
Is that what
depends
we're
on what
told?
happens with the budget. They want money to keep buying things.
Well, that's what we were told before, though, that
Yeah.
that was all going to fit.
I would say we have an agreement between the Historical Commission and Society and the Select Board that memorializes the agreement, the relationship between those bodies and how it works for the collection of materials and disposing of them and everything else. We're out of the term of that MOU. It might be a good idea for us to renegotiate that and look at that agreement with a fresh set of eyes.
I agree.
So that's something that I'm happy to put on a future agenda.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
of
I think we
interest.
could even get to that like after town meeting and everything.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we just need to, do we need to vote that or are we going to wait to hear from the church?
Well, it's
I mean, I
really
think,
up to you because the signatory on this would be the commission. The select board doesn't need to sign this at the recommendation of council. So it is up to you if you want to vote to approve it or not. I don't think you necessarily need to.
Okay, so you're saying the commission's the ones that
The
approve
commission
it.
will sign it.
And
Your
not us.
your agreement to it really just comes in the appropriation, I would say, recommending the town meeting vote on that appropriation.
okay. So we'll just keep that in our budget discussions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Assuming that you want to move forward with that and you want to move forward with
Yeah.
that. I mean,
I will
I think
update
that's
you
okay.
if there's any significant changes.
Okay.
I don't anticipate any.
that's Ed.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry, Ed, there's some blue ones here where you have to sign.
Oh, that's right.
You're the clerk.
That's right. I forgot.
Okay. Easements for Day Pond.
So this is more turning into a update on the Day Pond project. We got some excellent news yesterday that I'll lead with. Maybe was it today? Anyway, I remember it like it was yesterday. We got excellent news that there's a permit. There's 2 permits that are active right now. One of which is the notice of intent that the Conservation Commission will review on Thursday evening. The second is a state-run process called the 401Q, and this typically takes. We budgeted for anywhere between 6 to 10 months for this to be completed. We found out yesterday that one of the staff members who handles this for the state, who's aware of this project and has been working on this project, is actually planning to retire soon and wants to try to finish this before he retires. So we might actually have it finished within the next month, which would just be incredible and put us ahead of schedule. So that could be really great news. It helps potentially move up our construction timeline and everything else as long as the project is approved at town meeting for the next portion of Community Preservation Act funds. So that could potentially move the project forward sooner, which would be really great for a lot of things. But one of those reasons why it's great is because it helps us with the big question of how do we access the pond? And we really have two main options that have been considered lately. The reason we put these easements on was because one of the options was to go through private property. There's 3 property owners who would be accessed from Day Avenue, one of which is the parking lot owned by Dr. Hauschka, and then 2 private property owners that basically abut the pond. And we would set up all of the construction equipment and everything else there by the pond. We have since met with those property owners and considered what all this would look like, and the engineers are leaning towards the idea that probably accessing through Smith Academy fields is going to be the better way to go. While it's a little further as a route, it requires fewer easements. There's more of an area to lay down construction equipment, have a dewatering zone set up, and everything else. So that's the direction we're planning to head at the moment. We still may need some easements because of some of the work that's going to be going on there. In which case, those easements would come to town meeting. We'll bring those back to you. I'll pause there because it's a lot of information I just threw at you. But and Ed has been involved in this as well. And if you
Actually, we have one
Yeah.
this was one option that
was one
we
option.
had discussed off of Main Street to go through the parking lot that's behind the church. And there was like 3 property owners
This is
involved.
Day Ave. Yeah, so
Yeah,
off of
Day
Main and
Avenue
down that
and-
way.
But there's been some issues with where to store the stuff, so the school is the other option right now. There is a third option that's in discussion, but since there's nothing conclusive, I don't want to even bring it up for possible discussion yet.
And our engineers are interested in trying to make a decision on this pretty quickly so that they can present that at Concom on Thursday night and move forward with this certification
Right.
for 401Q.
Plus, if we go through the school, then we may have to lay some stuff down for the trucks because of the soft ground, depending which time of year.
And the
Unless
plan is
it's
to do.
winter
Sorry, go
time.
ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's all right.
The plan is to have this take place in the winter once the ground is harder. They will still lay down some extra gravel and everything else, and they're responsible for remediating anything that's been torn up or anything else. So all of that will be done. We had a good meeting with the superintendent yesterday as well. Just took a walk and looked at all the site, and I think that was helpful.
It looks good. I mean, Andrew's been on top of it, so I give him a lot of credit. So I want to thank you for that, Andrew.
Oh, it's a great volunteer run effort here too. So Brian Nicholas has been very good to work with.
Yeah, Brian's great. So
And
thank
Brian
you.
Nichols has been on top of it too, so he's been a great asset to this.
Yeah,
So I think I was expecting to bring you, preliminary details on what these easements might look like. At this time, I don't think that's in the cards, but we still may need some easements because of the work that's happening there, just not the same way we were expecting. So I'll be following up with those property owners. I really appreciate them coming in and being present for a meeting and trying to figure out what the best path forward looks like. And right now, it's looking like it will be through the school.
Yeah, the property owners were good. It was a great discussion to get to understand their side of their viewpoints and what they felt about it, so. Guess we'll see.
so you're just going to keep us posted at this point,
That's the plan.
but it's moving in a favorable direction.
Yes, and we'll know more after Thursday night with the Concom permitting. I think there'll be a lot of questions then, but I think it should be a good discussion. And then the next big step is that other state permit, and then the other next big step will eventually be town meeting. CPC
Right.
has shown that they're planning on approving that additional funding, recommending approval for that funding. So that will go through this body and then town meeting.
Because the additional funding has been approved by CPA to bring that forward, right?
They're actually meeting at 6 p.m. this evening to
Okay.
to make their final recommendations, and that will come here.
Great. Okay,
CPC, I should have said, okay.
all set with that?
I'm all set.
So topic 4 is appointments and resignations. So you're looking for us to make appointments to the implementation committee for the comprehensive plan, and that would be Rebecca Bench, Doug Finn, and David Keir.
Yes, and they would be representatives for school committee, planning board, and finance committee,
Yep.
respectively.
Mhm.
This body had said that you wanted to have recommendations from those groups. They would tell you who they were looking to appoint, and then you would vote on the final appointments there. So those are the three representatives from those three bodies. They would join, I believe it's Greg who's going to be from the select board. And John Pease has been appointed so far. So then we'll be almost there for a full committee.
So I'll make a motion to appoint Rebecca Bench, Doug Finn, and David Keir to Implementation Committee for Comprehensive Plan.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Three great appointments. And then we do have one person for consideration for a at-large member to the same implementation committee, and that is Julia Frisbee.
Julia was a member of the original committee. She was an at-large member then. She would be an at-large member now. We have 3 at-large positions. One has been filled by John Pease. The other one, we don't have someone yet. Remember, we have 2 at-larges who we want to be representing open space, historic preservation, and/or agriculture. John Pease is one of those. Julia would be the at-large, not
Yeah,
necessarily
that would be,
representing.
Julie would be great.
Mhm. It's nice to have volunteers.
It is nice to have volunteers.
I'll make a motion to appoint Julia Frisbee to 2040 Implementation Committee for Comprehension Plan at Large member.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I just have to sign those. And then we have a pay adjustment to sign here for the fire department, ambulance department. But this is really great because we have someone who was a firefighter EMT basic who is now a firefighter paramedic. And so that triggers a pay increase, and that's great news for us. So just think it's worth mentioning.
Excellent.
That's a lot of work that she
It-
went through to become a paramedic.
Yeah, that's
That's like overtakes your life. For a couple
Nicole
years.
Thornton.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
So-
she's just a wonderful person. So
Thank you,
that's really,
Nicole.
yeah, thank you, Nicole. I'm just going to sign these. Sorry, I'm just reading. Oh, okay. And we can go ahead if you want with the discussion for the DPW director.
Excellent. So at the last meeting, we discussed what next steps might look like. We had two action steps, I think, on the table. One was to look at the current job descriptions for the superintendents and think about which functions of the DPW director were potentially not being filled or maybe were being filled by some of these superintendents. And the other step was to look at the functions of the DPW director that are in the job description and look at right now what isn't being taken care of. What are the functions that are still remaining? So I went back to the grid that I'd put together originally when I went through what the different tasks are and had grouped them into a few categories, into administration, department strategy, management, technical expertise. And if you go back through those, it feels like there still is a gap that exists. And I think we've hit on that in our conversations. And I'm just going to tee up this conversation and then let you 3 take it away because I'm really looking for your guidance on next steps here eventually. But I do have some recommendations. And if you look at what's missing, there's one function which is the general oversight, mostly of the 3 superintendents. And some of that's paperwork based. It's approving of absences. It's approving of time off, or it's approving of payroll, having a second eye on contracts and other things. But there also is just a bit of an accountability question of, should it be the select board who's directly managing these things, or is it better to have an intermediary that could be one of the superintendents themselves? So that's one item. The other, we've spoken about this briefly, is just 2 functions that we had incorporated into the DPW director's job description that would need to be reassigned. So that's the tree warden
Mhm.
and that's the ADA coordinator. And both of those things are easy enough to reassign. There are some things that you might like a tree warden to have as qualifications, but they're not all necessarily mandatory. While some towns have one that's an arborist, you also just need somebody who has an understanding of what sorts of projects and things are going on and be able to give an answer, yes or no, on different things quickly. So that's the tree warden. And then same with the ADA coordinator. That's pretty much spelled out by the state of what that person needs to be doing. And then the other item that we have come back to a number of times is this overall oversight and kind of strategy development, thinking about capital projects, the direction of the department, coordinating with other agencies, coordinating with other pieces of town government, and really having that overall responsibility for the direction of the department. So if you look at those three things, there's not necessarily a full-time job in there. There could be, and I think we benefit from having that. But one thing that could be done is to appoint one of the three superintendents as some kind of DPW superintendent, who then would help with the management of those other two superintendents and have approval over the payroll, everything else, and just those kind of management pieces, not necessarily the leadership and direction, but some of the management there. You'd reassign those duties of tree warden and ADA coordinator. You'd make a decision about who those would go to. I'd recommend they be to a position that's appointed so that you are making an appointment on a somewhat regular basis, whether it's every 3 years or so. That would be helpful for the statutes that exist. And then you could potentially create, and I've been noodling on this and we'll hand it over to you to think about further, but a part-time position of a town position, director of capital assets and projects. It could be charged with these responsibilities. So there's overall responsibility for town facilities, so kind of that maintenance and facilities director position. Project management for capital projects, overseeing the capital plan, overseeing all energy management and sustainability programs, reviewing and improving of, say, engineering and design for projects, applying for and managing capital-related grants, providing any technical advice and assistance to superintendents and on facilities and capital-related projects, helping with connecting day-to-day operations with the overall goals of the department at the direction of the select board, and potentially even representing the DPW on the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee. That came to mind. Then I had put this item of overseeing continuous improvement of the Department of Public Works. This kind of oversight slash strategy position that could be helpful. So those are just some thoughts that I had about what's missing, and that's maybe a position that could be helpful for the department and for the board. So I will stop there after teeing all that up and let you
Oh,
react.
did you also look at possibly town administrator taking on the oversight of those three positions?
That's
And,
yeah.
and how that would affect your job? Would it make it harder for you? Would it make it,
Well,
mean,
I mean,
I'm just saying, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
I don't think that they're difficult to supervise, but it's still work. It's, right, they're,
I would say right now, it's certainly something I've been doing, is working a lot more closely with the superintendents. Managing, not necessarily, but working closely with, collaborating and being brought into all their projects probably in a way that the director would have been before. I don't see it as being something that would necessarily overstretch the position in isolation. And it's something that isn't, that's consistent with the administrator's role as defined, I think, so far by the select board. But yeah, I could see that as something that.
Okay, my next question would be is if we decided to go with a superintendent being the lead superintendent, would that, and it's an appointment, would that then become a salary position, or would that positions which would be an increase, but would that position be salary, or would it maintain as a getting overtime?
well, I think if we're keeping the same duties, they should be entitled to overtime because that's currently a emergency and storm response position. So there could be maybe a a stipend that gets added to the salary to cover the extra duties, but that person should still get calls, get paid, compensated for when they're working all night on storms and that sort of
So if that person does take the lead and assumes more responsibility, would that person now need another person to be like a foreman under them? Would we now have to create a foreman's position because now the superintendent's, some of his work's now more in the office and doing more paperwork and doing a lot of other things? Would he now need a foreman for the road, for whatever? I'm just asking, that's all.
Well, and there is an assistant for paperwork as well.
There is. Yep.
And the water department already has a foreman, right?
Water department has an assistant superintendent.
Assistant superintendent.
So I think all of those things are options. I think, a foreman type position rather than a new superintendent, like a director and a superintendent, that could be helpful. Certainly to have someone who would be in charge of daily operations if that other superintendent had less time to do it.
Well, then if we got a
Good.
part-time person that has an engineering background, what type of projects I know we have 3 grants for asset management of drinking water, sewer water, and our run water, right? So, we don't know if anything's going to come out of that, or whether it's just repairs, or whether there's recommendations, right? I mean,
Well, and we know that we need to be looking at more of our culverts, part of our culvert system. So I guess I'm curious, that was a pretty decent list of what, when you say part-time, what do you think it would require? It's more than 50%, more than 20 hours a week.
Feels like 60% at least, doesn't it,
Yeah.
on that list? I don't know. That's
And then
something we
another
have to figure out.
question is the tree warden position. Could we go back to having a tree warden? We used to have a tree warden in town that was not, like Luke could probably be the tree warden. So is there also another option is taking that bulk of that work to somebody,
You can contract for the tree warden, definitely. Yep, that's something that can be done. You contract out to a firm to do it, or you appoint
or a
somebody
stipend
else. Yep.
to a qualified person in
Yep.
town.
we had somebody that I thought was qualified that offered their services.
I thought
as
Luke
tree
did. Yeah.
warden at
Yeah.
one time, but with the DPW regulations, it stated that the tree warden would be under the DPW.
You had eliminated that position. That's correct.
Right.
By a special act.
It used to be an elected position.
Oh,
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
I have a story about that actually.
I look forward to hearing it.
So,
Wow.
there's so many options.
There's a lot of options.
I mean, as far as culverts, if our concern is culverts, we could actually possibly do a small contract with a firm to look at culverts if that was an issue. I mean, that's one option. Then we can go to town meeting and see if they would fund it.
I think
or-
there'd be somebody that would need to just spearhead the initial, like, we're ready to, have even an inventory of our culverts. But I think us 3 just sitting here having this conversation is not necessarily the most productive. I think it's time to talk with our 3 superintendents and really see what they're thinking, especially about the duties that we're suggesting be, pushed onto one or more of them, and really
Well,
get a
since-
sense for,
Since that conversation may entail a lot of issues, maybe just one of us sit with the 3 of them and come back with a report. So I don't know if that conversation should be open meeting at this time, or whether it's better to have it as a closed meeting with just one of us to find out where they're coming from. I'm just throwing
yeah,
that
I
out
mean,
there.
they might feel a little put on the spot if,
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
I think they may discuss betterly in a closed session than an open session, their feelings. So, I mean, that's just a suggestion, whether it be the chair or Greg or myself, whoever wants, and hopefully with Andrew, set up
yeah, I was going to say,
time and-
whichever one of us, I'm certainly willing to do it.
I
I think that would be a great idea if we met with them because
You might have some really interesting insight.
I don't know their
um,
job.
Yeah,
You
right. I don't know
uh,
everything about their
no, I
jobs, of
think
course not.
we're just shooting what's missing here. Yeah.
Right. I'd
Anyway,
even be curious about their opinions of the list of things you know, your list of things that would still need to be fulfilled through another position. And yeah, I mean, I'm certainly willing to do it. But I think it would be good to have them all together.
Yeah, I think
Get,
that's the
get
best
three
way.
together and have a conversation. It sounds great.
And then we get a truer understanding of where they stand and what they feel about this and what they think the need should be, so.
Mhm.
yeah, we've got a good crew. I value their opinion.
I agree. I agree. Okay.
Nice.
Okay.
We'll talk about some potential dates.
Yep, that sounds
Great.
great.
Okay. Topic 6, GPS options for town vehicles.
So this was something that came from Select Board Member Jaworski. There was an interest in seeing, what technologies are out there for GPS. Could it help us with some of these accountability questions, with some of these maintenance improvements? So Ed and I had 3 demos with 3 different
I appreciate
companies.
you doing that.
Yeah, it was I think very useful to see what was out there.
Very interesting.
They're all kind of the same at a certain point, but they have their own flavor, each of them, and I'd say the 3 demos were all different in their own way. So three companies: Rastrack, GPS Insight, and Verizon Connect. Verizon, you've heard of it's Verizon. What they pitch as their advantage is that they own the networks as well, so that's something interesting. But I made a list of the different functions that all of them have. So all of them basically have different platforms with live maps that show vehicle status. They can give you reports on vehicle usage, including idling, route selection, if different vehicles use the same route multiple times, especially helpful for, say, snow clearing. Ability to find the closest vehicle to a certain place if you need someone to get out somewhere immediately. Maintenance modules to track needed services, alerts when vehicles leave a geofence or specified area, emission system reports, they have mobile apps, and then configurable dashboards with reports that you can pull as well. So all of them have monthly fees for their service. You pay a monthly fee per vehicle. And depending on the company we were to choose, you might also need to pay for the hardware itself. So you also have the choice, all of them tried to pitch us as well on cameras. That they like that you can get a front-facing dashboard camera as well. And they say that these are great for being a witness in a case of, say, a false claim, improving driver safety, potentially reducing claims with your insurance company, which maybe that could eventually lower your premiums. And then there's alerts that are triggered if there's driving incidents or swerving or other things. So as far as benefits go, this technology could provide us with some better accountability for vehicles. The analytics could potentially help save some money on fuel and maintenance. And then, as I said, there's the long-term dream of your insurance premiums potentially come down because these help make your car so much safer. Should be great. Disadvantages is really just in the cost. And I will go over just how much I think it would cost annually. And you would probably commit to a 3-year deal, and we don't quite know how would we use this. Is it definitely something that would improve all of our work streams and everything else? And you could argue that we already have ways that we're monitoring maintenance. There's other ways of getting accountability besides installing GPS devices, and we don't know who would manage or use that real-time data. So some of that accountability is helpful. We still don't necessarily have the number, we believe, of violations or claims that would definitely save us money, per se. So those are all considerations. As far as costs go, let me just find my document here. So the amount is pretty much a little under $20 a month per vehicle. So if you run the overall numbers, it depends on which vehicles you wanted to use, it'll be around a little less than $10,000 annually So about $9,500 on the ones I think we're the most interested in. That would be for 42 vehicles, which would represent basically all of our vehicles that are out there driving on the streets. And we could decide, do you want it to be emergency vehicles or not? Do you want it to be pieces of equipment that get less use or not? But that's the overall ballpark at the moment.
42 is all in.
All in.
So that would be fire trucks, ambulances, backhoes,
Yep.
Everything.
Yep, that's correct. COA vans, hauler trucks.
I do want to point out that one of them, they would charge you per vehicle for installation, and they would charge between $90 and $250.
Wow.
So the other ones included the installation with their fees. So that gave
Were
the
the
other
fees
ones.
fairly comparable?
The fees were comparable on the two that did installation. I think that they had a lower rate at that one you just mentioned, where they're charging for installation and everything else. They were a little more a la carte. You could probably game it so that you're paying less through them, but I wasn't as impressed by their platform as well. So
Right, I wasn't too impressed either.
their
Actually,
website was a little
Yeah.
less high tech. I had a feeling they'd be like
I
the
mean,
cheaper option.
the advantage on the Verizon side was the fact that not only do they install, they also support the software. The other guy, he had outside contractors install, and his outside contractors support the software. But his advantage was that he would lock you into a 3-year contract, whereas Verizon was 1 year. And the other thing I like to point out is cameras are separate on this. And it was pointed out to us that sometimes Maya provides grants for cameras, because the other advantage of the camera, a front end camera, not a camera facing the driver, the front end camera for the insurance purposes sometimes lowers your insurance rates. And it's also, if say you get a call that snowstorm, so-and-so must have knocked over my mailbox, right? You can look it up and you can see, well, it wasn't our driver, or yes, it was our driver and we'll correct it. I mean, there's some advantages to that. Plus, it also has a warning if the vehicle gets too close, along with if the vehicle goes outside the area, there's an alert that's sent out. If the somebody grabs it on the weekend to use it for personal use, the alert goes out. I mean, there's a lot of different advantages for the GPS. So the camera is a different price, and that's another consideration if Maya is willing to possibly provide a grant for it. So I don't know if Maya's gotten back to us yet on whether they still have grants for cameras or not.
Yeah, happy to address that. So Maya runs an annual risk mitigation grant application process. They have $1 million for their clients across the state. Everyone can get up to around $10,000, and that will open in July. So that does include funding for, it looked like on the website, GPS would be included and wouldn't necessarily need to have the cameras as well. I think the GPS alone might be enough. The cameras starts bringing this to about $22,000 to $25,000 annually if you have the cameras as well. It's just a little more expensive equipment. But those Maya grants are available. They have two different processes. They have those annual safety grants, and then they have these rewards that you can earn and put that towards grants as well. So again, that opens in July.
And can you get that funding so you could apply every year and try to get?
Yes.
It's not a one time. So if you have this 3-year contract that's $10,000 a year, you could apply for
Sure.
all or part of it each year.
That's correct.
Doesn't mean you're going to get it.
That's correct.
And did they have any statistics about how many communities are now doing this?
That's a good question. There were 4 around us that are doing it. I think they listed Chicopee, South Hadley, and UMass Amherst, and one other I can't remember nearby that's using it. Just from one company alone has clients there. I didn't get numbers on how many are doing it, but I'll find out. That's worth knowing.
Yeah.
And I think the other company was across the United States.
Yeah.
They do them throughout the United States. So,
Okay.
so it's pretty interesting. I mean, and also, if the board so desires, they're willing to come in and do a presentation, so you guys can actually see, what we saw, and get an understanding if it makes sense to get it or not make sense to get it. But with Maya grants and stuff, and we are looking for some accountability, I mean, it might be a good option for us.
I think with that, we'd probably have to have policies and
That's what I was
like
going to say.
when we're gonna look at this.
We're going to need a
who-
We'd have to go to the
policy.
union. Yep.
Yeah,
What happens if it is, we do detect some type
Yeah,
of vehicle
right.
misuse and
I know Verizon would be willing to come in. I mean, on one hand, I was looking at the last two we mentioned, Verizon sort of does it all, which is sort of nice, where the other one uses outside contracts for some of it, but, and their prices are almost the same, right? I mean,
Yeah.
well, those other towns that you mentioned must have policies already. We could
Certainly.
see what they got and
Yep.
instead of trying to invent something here.
well, I appreciate all the work. I think it's, something to think about.
I think it was a fun to listen to the presentation and the technology that's out there. I thought that was great, just learning about that. I mean, they even mentioned cases where they're tied into the engine and they get a warning that the engine's got a problem before the warning light comes on. So I thought that was pretty neat. Plus their mechanics had a warning that, something's due for an oil change or something's due for tire rotation. And I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know, we probably wouldn't use all of it.
I was going to
but
say, it sounds like there's much more functionality than
yes.
That's the big question.
is
What-
right.
what will be used?
Right.
What exactly are we trying to accomplish?
Right, exactly.
And is that really just too sophisticated?
Yeah,
So if they do a presentation, then the town gets to see it, and you guys get to see it,
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
everybody sort of gets an understanding of what we're talking about.
yeah. It might be beneficial for some departments to like know where the vans are or something if they need to use it or redirect it somewhere, I suppose. I mean,
I feel like generally speaking, sorry, we generally know where the vehicles are.
yeah, really, yeah.
I think so.
But
I think it's up to this board to think about, and maybe it's something you get feedback from the superintendent's on,
I was
since you'll have
gonna
them in
say.
anyway.
Yeah.
Do they see a use case for it? And that might be helpful.
yeah, it is a lot of money.
Not nothing. I mean, we'll get to the topic of budget a lot more, but
Right.
can I find $10,000 in our budget? It's
Right.
a good question.
That's a nice grant, and that's because they know that it has been effective to help prevent accidents.
Right.
And
Right. Okay. I mean, I'm good with that. We could take a quick break before we welcome in the finance committee. Did you want to do that?
Okay.
I can do a real quick town administrator report. Just to
Oh,
bang
yeah,
that out
sure.
Too.
Yep.
If we take that out of order. I do not have much. I just wanted to let you know a couple things real quickly, mostly in grant world. So last week, Congressman McGovern's office had their deadline for submitting any requests for federal earmarks. I was not planning on submitting anything. It didn't seem like there was going to be much of an avenue for increased federal spending from anywhere, but I was encouraged to do so and did find that I talked to USDA, who recommended actually putting in for the community facilities grant project, just to at least give them some interest, because that would potentially be a funding source for a new public safety building if we needed one. That is a program that's set up to help rural communities fund community facilities, and a public safety building would absolutely be a good fit for that. So very preliminary. I can't imagine that they will choose that as one of their priorities, but if they do, it'll be great to start those conversations. So that's just something I wanted to share with this body. The state also has the municipal vulnerability plan grants that are going on right now. We're planning to partner with Hadley to try to implement one of the pieces from the comprehensive plan, which is to get a better assessment of our ditch networks. That's something that the comprehensive plan said would be something very helpful both for our farmers and for stormwater management in general. It could help and be a good fit for this MVP program. So we're getting a scope put together for that and planning to submit for that grant by the end of the month. So that should be an interesting thing to be able to get some assistance for. One other thing I just wanted to let this board know about, and I don't think I'll be part of this process, but just wanted to remind you that now is probably not a bad time to start on negotiations for the one open contract that we have. That's for our town treasurer. So that's out of contract by the end of this fiscal year. So just
Okay.
something to get started on.
Yeah, we
we're
should
ready.
do that as we're moving through the budget process.
Yep.
So maybe that's an executive session, right?
It absolutely can be. Yep,
Yeah, so maybe the next meeting, if we have time? Okay,
I can add that.
if she can be here.
Great. That's all I got.
Excellent. Well, we can take a quick break while we wait for the finance committee to show up.
Perfect.